Welcome back to the Nerdy South, where each week we give our initial reaction and episode review and discuss what's next for the Disney Plus series Loki. With me, as always, is Jeremy and Grayson, and I am Joey. And before we get anywhere, spoiler alert for the show Loki, and any spoilers for what might come if any of our theories are correct. So, without further ado, let's get down and nerdy. What did we think of the episode? Initial reactions. Episode 5.
Well, before we get into the episode, I was watching a couple of videos this week, and this one girl had a really interesting theory. I just wanted to get your initial take on it before we launch into the episode. So if you look at every one of the episodes, they're always very color-centric. Like the first episode was very yellowish orange. The second episode was very, leaned towards the red. The third one was purple. The fourth one was a little more orange as opposed to yellow in the beginning. And then, of course, this episode, there was a whole lot of green. And so this girl's theory was that each one of the episodes was harkened back to an Infinity Stone.
Okay.
How if you look at everyone, episode 3 where it's very purple, that's the Power Stone, and you start to see Loki and Sylvie's powers kind of grow and expand. The second one was red, and so it was reality, and Loki begins to question the reality of what the TVA is all about. It was a really interesting video. If anybody watching is interested, I can track it down again and send it out. But I thought it was an interesting take on Loki and the Time Stone, all the Infinity Stones, and it was cool.
That's very interesting.
Interesting theory. I don't know. It seems a little too coincidental to have any standing merit, but there are supposed to be 6 episodes of Loki, and there are 6 Infinity Stones. So who knows? It is a very colorful show, but yeah.
Yes. So
speaking of theories, I guess this is a good opportunity to go ahead and debunk a couple theories that we have already suggested. Obviously, I don't think the Time Stone is going to show up. I don't think Loki has it.
No, I guess not.
That one is gone. Not a theory debunked. What are some of the theories that we've had so far that either we've gotten right or that have been debunked?
I know Grayson, I think it was like the first episode, he theorized that the timekeepers were not real. And
right.
So far, all evidence points to that theory being true, considering that they were androids when we finally got to see them.
I definitely thought as we were watching this episode that we were going to get a glimpse of something, and then of course they hit us with the credits as they do. Had to get me coming back for that. It's not like I'm not coming back for the last episode anyway, so it's like I get it, but now it's like frustrating for like a whole week, right? I think one theory that I may have said at some point was like that it's the variant's not a Loki, but they're perpetrating as a Loki to try to draw in the TVA, and that's been debunked now. So Sylvie is a Loki, but she doesn't go by Loki. So,
yeah, I thought it was. I mean, I didn't have any theory outside of the Infinity Stones theory that I have.
Yes, that's a new one. We'll see if it has any merit to come to the end of the season.
It may just be a simple nod by Marvel to.
I don't know, man. I keep a keen eye on the end credits because they change every so slightly to based off what happened in the episode. So like in this episode's end credit scenes, we saw a lot of the Loki variants in the files and stuff, which we hadn't seen before. And while we had seen an Infinity Stone as a paperweight in the credits throughout this whole series so far, in this end credits, we see a lot of Infinity Stones, peppered throughout that middle portion of the end credits. So it's a theory worth keeping in mind for sure.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive into the episode, and let's get Joey. Since you asked us the question, I'd love for you to respond first. What did you think of the episode?
I thought it was the best episode yet. I feel like I keep saying that with every new episode, but this one was a fun episode. It was my favorite episode so far. Uh, we got a lot of the clips that we hadn't seen yet from the trailer. We saw almost all those clips. We have a few more, I think a couple more left. But overall, this series is shaping up to be probably one of the best Disney Plus series so far, and maybe even one of the best Marvel properties that the MCU has come out with so far.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I definitely liked. We got to spend a lot of time with the variants in this episode and kind of hear where they came from and a little bit of their stories. And of course, it does focus a lot on like the older Loki, who spent time kind of on a planet on his own. He kind of goes to tell us, and I really enjoyed all that part of the episode, starting right off the top when we see Loki on in this void, they call it. They say that's Goliath, and I thought they said Goliath, which was going to be like another name for Galactus, because it's just this cloud coming down with his face in it. I was like, oh my gosh, is this how they're about to introduce like Galactus? Like, what is happening? Of course, it's not. There, I was just freaking out. Like the nerd antennas were up, man. I was very pumped about that moment. But I loved the episode as well. I was actually driving, like listening to it the first time I went through it because I was like, I just want to absorb a little bit of it, and then I watched it again later, and I was like, this is a really good episode. Like we got a ton of stuff going on, but it's all gratifying stuff as somebody who's been watching the season as it's been developing.
I will say this episode specifically had a lot of cameos, and I this is not the YouTube podcast that we're gonna go frame by frame of the episode and tell you all the secrets and stuff. There's plenty of those out there, so go find a great video that dives into this. But there's a ton, and I haven't gone frame by frame to look at all the fun little things that they put into the void, but there's a ton of them, and I wish I had like the time to stop and look at them.
Yeah, I would agree. This one was great. I mean, it 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 played a lot of fan service. It played up fan service heavy to the MCU, to the comics, um, everything from the frog version of Thor. It was a simple drag by, to Thanos' helicopter that he flew in the comics. And there was just a massive amount. And yeah, Joey's right. This is not that. This is not that channel, but there are plenty of channels that do it really well. But I just loved the banter back and forth between the Lokis. We didn't get to hear the alligator talk, which is kind of disappointing. I'm not going to lie, but the kid version saying that he killed Thor, and that was his Nexus event. And so just hearing all the different Loki's Nexus events that landed them there, and then finding out that where they're at is basically just a dumping ground for everything that either gets reset or pruned, which is what we talked about in the Shang-Chi episode. That we weren't sure, and we saw Avengers Tower that was there. There was a freaking Quinjet that was there. All this stuff that just harkens back to the MCU, and hearing all this stuff that either got pruned or reset there was just it was nice fan service for the episode. And back on the Elias thing real quick, I had to rewind it 3 times because I thought they said Goliath too. And so then on the third time, I just turned on closed captioning so that I could read exactly what his name was.
I heard it perfectly the first time, Elias. Anyway,
we're older than you. Jeez.
Yeah, come on, Joe.
Better ears, I guess. Back to the theories. That reminds me, theory confirmed, right? Kind of, right? I theorized that it was not going to a separate timeline. That when you get pruned, you go to this dumpster area. They call it now the void. It's not really like a dumpster area. It's just the void, before the end of all things. And so it makes sense that Mobius showed up and Sylvie showed up when she pruned herself, and a lot of great stuff happened there. But yay, we confirmed a theory.
Exactly. I was excited to see that we split time between the void and the TVA. Because I was hoping that they weren't going to leave what happened with Sylvie and Renslayer till the last episode. There was a lot to unpack back at the TVA too. All of her interactions, man, with Miss Minutes, and
Yes. So let's talk about Renslayer a little bit. What do we think is motive here? Do we think that she actually knows what's going on, or do we think that what she said to Hunter B-15, that doesn't matter, order has to be kept, right? What do we think about Renslayer?
I think she's actually the bad. I think she's the big bad. I think she's faking the whole thing. I think that she wants order back. And yeah, she wants to find out the truth. But I think all that is a complete lie to try to manipulate the people around her into being like into submission until she can regain control. And maybe she's a person who, like Doctor Strange, can kind of split their mind kind of thing. And, the true form is what we're going to see very soon. But yeah, I think she's actually the big bad. I don't think we're going to meet anybody new. I think we might meet what Renslayer's true form is, because I don't think that's the true form. But I think she's way more involved than she's leading on to.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that she is she definitely knows more than she's leading on, which we've seen that now time and time again, where she acts, she plays dumb, and then she was lying, and then she plays dumb again, and then she was lying, right? When she had that interaction with Hunter B-15, as soon as she said, don't you want to know who this is, right? And she just kind of paused, and we pause on her for a minute, and she kind of like, she looks deep in thought, or like she's thinking about something, and that little bit of nonverbal cue was enough for me to go, she knows exactly who's behind all this. It might be her, like you say. Mm-hmm. Personally, I don't know if I don't know if I lean on that theory. We'll see how who's in the fortress at the end, but I definitely think that she knows who it is, and she's working with them.
Yeah, I definitely think she knows who it is. I think that she just doesn't know where they are. And I think that she was either dropped in the TVA or told the party line. And so I think she does know. I actually don't think that she's the bad. I think that she has a bone to pick with the one in charge. And I am a firm believer that it's Kang. Now, do I think we're going to see him? No. Do I think that we may get a nod like we did at the end of Avengers? Yeah. To Thanos. But, all signs are pointing to, in my opinion, all signs are pointing to Kang. I mean, it looks like his fortress, it fits. He has a direct comic book connection to Alioth and to Renslayer. And so there are just too many little things that are sprinkled out for it not to be him. And so, I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, from the moment that Thanos was actually brought into the MCU to the moment that we actually saw Thanos was like a multitude of movies.
Sure.
And so I think that they're gonna do the same thing. They're gonna bait chum the water a little bit with the end of Loki, and then we're not gonna actually interact with him initially until Quantumania. And I think it's gonna be in the back of everyone's mind. I think Multiverse of Madness is gonna reference him. I think No Way Home, same thing. I think there are going to be subtle nods to Kang from here on out, but I do think that he's the big bad. Almost knocked over my computer there. But it was just, it makes me so excited. Of course, there was no end credit scene. They whet my appetite with the last episode, and then just left me hanging this time. And you get so spoiled with it after every freaking movie, and then I don't need a lot. I just need something.
Right.
Because just give me something. I don't care what it is. It could have been the alligator, just, swimming in the pool. But give me an end scene, give me an end credit scene. So, but it was intense to see Loki's power, for him to fully understand that because one Loki can do it, that means that they all can do it.
Yeah. The line that they say, cool. The line that he says to Sylvie too about, I think we're more powerful than we know, was such a good line. It was so awesome to see this the actual power taking place from the older Loki, and then them witnessing it and also trying to like, you know, take over the mind of Eliath. All that was so gratifying to see, and for Loki to finally realize like that he's more than all this, you know, he's more than just glorious purpose, which was an amazing moment to see the older Loki actually receive and discover his glorious purpose that he's been waiting for. And this was it. This was the moment to basically save his other selves in the void. Super
That was
cool.
a beautiful moment. Beautiful moment.
Yeah.
I loved that part. The whole, you know, you obviously learn even more about Loki every episode, but even more so now you realize, well, how similar they all are, right?
Yeah.
They're all gods of mischief in their own way. You know, but our Loki, the one we've been following, you can tell that he has grown and changed and is different. And Sylvie is growing and changing as well. And I loved the reveal that, you know, when Sylvie tells him to help her, you know, enchant the Goliath, he's like, I can't do it. And she's like, you can, like we all can. We all have the same powers. That's so cool. That's such a neat, like we went throughout this series so far, assuming that different variant Lokis have different, you know, powers or abilities, but we just confirmed that like they all can do the same thing. It's just unleashing that power. And that's really interesting. And I don't know how it's going to play into the larger MCU picture, especially like where does Loki go from here after this series is over? We have a lot of other MCU properties that, you know, in the past, he was a part of all of them for the most part. I mean, he was the big bad in Avengers. He was, you know, in Thor. He ended up being in other movies, you know, leading up to Infinity War and all that. And so it just makes me wonder, like, okay, does his story end here? It can't, because they're like really building him up to be this very powerful being and a realization of his power. I mean, for old Loki to create all of Asgard, you know,
that was cool.
to distract Goliath, it was like, whoa. And I mean, to see the other Loki's reaction, be like, he can do that?
Right.
That's crazy.
I think a lot of where he goes from here it's determined on where this falls within the established MCU timeline. Because you know, if you look on Disney Plus, it goes Infinity War, Endgame, WandaVision. WandaVision. No, I'm sorry, Loki, and then WandaVision. So Loki, I think, falls before WandaVision in the chronology on Disney Plus.
Okay.
And so,
yeah, I guess technically, yes, it would.
Well, I mean, not technically, it is yes, because that's where they have it, like in the thumbnails when you watch it chronologically. Like Loki shows up before WandaVision, and so I think a lot of it's going to depend on where he falls in the timeline after this.
Right, like where they put him back, if you will.
Yeah, and so because I mean, we're dealing with the Loki from Avengers, and you know, when he goes to the TVA, he steps out of the MCU timeline, but where does he re-enter it?
Well, I mean, think of the repercussions of if he doesn't go back, then in that timeline, Thor 2, that movie doesn't happen.
But that timeline doesn't matter because Captain America reset it.
I'm saying in the branch timeline that's created with Loki gone. The branch timeline is like Thor 2 never happens. The Reality Stone the ether never gets absorbed by Jane and blah, 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 blah. You know?
Well, but technically when they picked him up from the TVA, they reset that timeline. So everything should be fixed in that one. And now he's just free agent out there. There was one scene that I really like. I liked. It was like, so Old Man Loki was like the pinnacle. And right below that was when Mobius and Loki get to have their little moment. You open the TVA door and they have the hug. And he says like, thank you, friend. And it was just like this realization moment that like, besides like Thor, and again, this is like Thor 2, so stuff that really hasn't happened to this Loki, this is really his first like real friend. And he's like finally coming to terms with that. And like you said, Joey, he's changed, he's grown, and we've gotten to see that. And it was so gratifying, even just over 5 episodes to see this happen. I was like, yes, I was like, so good.
Yeah, they had a really big task ahead of them because at the very beginning of this podcast, I mentioned that they have to turn a character that we've seen redeem himself. They have to now re-redeem himself and make him lovable again. Like they turned a very unlovable character, the Loki from Avengers was not lovable,
Right.
into this very lovable character that we saw in Ragnarok and in Infinity War. And they had to do it all over again. And they did. And they did it in a way that was only Loki, right?
Mm-hmm.
They used other Lokis to get the best out of this Loki. And at the end of this series, you know, we're gonna love this Loki as much as we loved him before.
It was cool to listen to old man Loki talk about the events of Infinity War happening differently.
Yes.
How, you know, he you know, projected himself and then hid in the debris and then just floated off into space. So I thought that part was really cool, you know, because we think of, you know, everything that's happened that's how it happened. You know, all the Lokis, you know, ended up dying at the hands of Thanos. But in reality, that's not how it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And even to listen to him like laugh when he mentions Thanos as if like, well, that's not really that important. When in our, you know, the timeline that we know, he was the ultimate, you know, he was the ultimate villain. And so it's just that they've done a really good job at expanding the consciousness of the MCU into all of these different um iterations. And I have a theory about how the show is going to end and how it ties in to the MCU going forward. But we'll talk about that at the end.
Well, what are some other other things that you noticed about this episode? You know, we're kind of reviewing it now and going through the parts that we liked. What were some things that maybe surprised y'all or that maybe you were waiting for or weren't so surprised by, but happy it happened?
So I was definitely waiting for the scene where we saw all the other variants and the one Loki, which I actually thought was going to be the main character Loki when we saw the trailer, but wearing the crown, wearing the vote for Loki pin, all that stuff. And just that, like, old man Loki says it right after that scene happens. He's like, we always backstab each other. We're always looking for the angle. And he's so like wise, man. He's like, he's such a wise Loki for especially what he did with Thanos too. That description of what happened. He knows a lot more than he was giving on to. And I think our Loki from our main Loki from the show has gathered a lot of that knowledge now, kind of understanding what could be and how even at the end of things they get lonely. And so like he's not alone in that feeling, which you can kind of tell he's feeling that without being with Sylvie and all that. So I thought that was interesting and something that I was already waiting on. So I thought it was a lot shorter of a moment than I thought it was going to be, but it was like, oh, okay, well, they're all turning on each other. It's just calamity. It's over, you know?
That's exactly the same. I kind of imagined this episode going a little differently in my head. I knew that President Loki was showing up. I had a feeling it would be in this episode. I was entirely waiting for them to be like, we're going to take you to President Loki. He's in charge of this area. And like, you have to like work for him or, you know, or you're going to die or something. It took a whole different direction. And that scene was very small, which I was very surprised by. I thought we spent a lot more time in that moment. I thought we spent I thought we would spend the whole episode just with the Loki variants in the void. But
I was glad we did, because
yeah,
I felt the same thing, but that also feels like super predictable, and they've on every episode been unpredictable. So
that's true.
They kept it going.
I want to go back a little bit. Go ahead, Jared.
Go ahead, Joe. No, go ahead, Joe.
Well, I just was going to go back for a minute and talk through like the opening scene of the show, of this episode, right? The camera moves through the TVA and coming through to the elevators and then going down the hallway, and the camera just keeps spinning, and then it goes, you know, into the timekeeper's place, and then it gets to the timekeeper's head that's on the ground, the android head, and then it goes right into you know Loki being, you know, in the void. It goes into the void, and we pass through all this. Like, why do you think that they decided to do that? Why would they open on such a spiral of a you know, movement through all of those events to get us to, or why not just open on the post-credit scene?
I feel
I don't
like
know. Go ahead, Michael.
I was gonna say they've done a form of almost a recap on almost every episode, but they didn't really do a recap on this one. And I felt like the imagery of what we saw was all the recap we really needed. We kind of got like the whole concept. All right, the TVA. There's the one of the timekeepers, the heads off. Boom, we're in the void. I thought as I was watching it, like the spinning camera angle, I was thinking like, okay, are they trying to show us that what we thought is now on its head? So kind of like the unexpectedness of the spiral is like, are we're spiraling down into the void, and it's all unexpected. Where we go from here is completely uncharted territory, kind of idea. And they do even say, I think Sylvie says it. Maybe Sylvie, can't recall, but she says, "Aren't you still looking for the man behind the curtain?" And I was like, "Well, okay." And we kind of said that last episode, like this is a very Wizard of Oz type vibe. So, yeah, I mean that was my thoughts of it. Jeremy, what about you?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, yeah, honestly, I did not pay. I did not give it much thought. Not as much as Joey, but that's what I love about you. You always think about things differently than I do. I just thought that it was a cool way to enter the show. Kind of taking you through the big, the elevator scene was huge. Last episode, getting down to the timekeepers, which is huge, and then the void, and the rest of the episode was fluff because it really the meat of that episode came from the time that they entered the elevator down, and so to me, you could attribute it to, it was spinning clockwise, if that's anything. And so the constant ticking of time could be a harken to that. I don't know.
Well, here's why I asked, because what it felt like to me was, and where I was kind of hoping it would go, and I was getting kind of excited about it as I was watching it, is it reminded me of in the Two Towers, Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, how we open on flying through the mountains, and it flies into the the misty mountains and into the caves, the mines of Moria, and we kind of relive the moment with Gandalf and the Balrog. Mm-hmm. And then instead of following the Fellowship, we follow Gandalf down and into, we see more shots of him fighting the Balrog. Of course, it ends with Frodo waking up from a dream or whatever. I was kind of hoping we'd get that here. We're reliving some of the things we just went through in the last episode, and maybe we'll get a little bit more behind the scenes of what was happening, like just a glimpse, and then it goes to Loki, waking up in the void. That's what I was kind of hoping for. It didn't do it. I was like, what was the point of all this really cool camera movement if you're not gonna give me a little something at the end? But
this is true.
That's why I asked. Well, that was the penalty.
I was just gonna say I want to focus in just a touch on Miss Minutes, because I think that there's a lot more to her character than meets the eye. I do think she's the most knowledgeable thing in the TVA, and I think that she is serving as a mouthpiece for whoever is really in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about Miss Minutes. I was actually going to bring the same thing up. This was the penultimate episode, the episode before the finale. But we got a lot more Miss Minutes in this episode than we had in any other. Not only that, but we also saw how Renslayer was able to summon her and go through data files. So she's not just like in this information, AI. She's almost like a servant or a maid, or if you will, where they're like, will you do this for me? Yes, let me look real quick. Okay, here it is. And it pulls it up, right? So Miss Minutes is a weird character, and it kind of creeps me out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. It's cutesy and stuff, but I feel like there's a more sinister side to Miss Minutes. And I'm glad you brought it up, because I sent y'all an Instagram of a TikTok where somebody had gone back to, I'm not sure which Thor it was. It was either Thor 1 or Thor 2. Was it
Pretty sure
two?
it's two. Pretty sure it's two.
Where Jane is wearing a T-shirt that has a graphic design on it, and the design is a orange clock with very retro eyes, and literally side by side, it looks just like Miss Minutes, and that's a little weird.
I love it.
It's interesting. I think it's also interesting that, like, really without actual verbal prompting, she was calling security. So like like when Loki says in episode 2, he says, are you a recording? Can you hear me? And he says, or are you actually like a living thing? And she says, a little of both. So she's alive. She's like a little bit of somebody's conscious and some recorded information. So she's kind of like this weird android too, man. Like where she's got a lot going on.
I think she's like akin to Jarvis.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, just a hyper intelligent, ever evolving AI. And, you know, and because Jarvis had a personality of his own, he did anything that Tony asked him to do. But at the same time, the second that he was in his own body, he continued, you know, he brought Jarvis to life. And so that's why I think that Miss Minutes is an extension, is a servant of whoever is ultimately pulling the strings.
So you think it's Ultron?
You know, there have been
when you said pulling the strings, I was like, oh man, pulling the strings. That's what Avengers 2 Age of Ultron was all about. Like him being the advanced AI and trying to kill Jarvis. But of course, Jarvis was incredibly, sneaky getaway.
Well, because Ultron's infrastructure came from the Mind Stone.
Yeah,
which was in Loki's possession. And so, you know, who am I to say that Kevin Feige hasn't had all of this planned for, 20, 25 years out? And I mean, everything just connects. Yeah. You know, it's not the first time that we've seen a hyper intelligent AI in the MCU. It's not going to be the last time. And so I think that Miss Minutes, Renslayer, I think they're all servants of a higher power. And he has either gone into hiding or fallen off the map, and that's why they're so eager to find him. I think.
Let's talk about some other theories that we have going on, because I think there's something to look at. Like, I have seen glimpses of the thought that maybe Ultron is behind the TVA. Maybe in some branch timeline, Ultron was successful, and he was behind, and he is the one who created the TVA, and got to the end of time and figured it all out. It sounds like something Ultron would do. And so that's something that's something to consider. I feel like that chapter is closed for the MCU. I don't think they would bring that back, but it's definitely a possibility of somebody who could be in charge. An AI, a powerful AI like Ultron, could come back easily.
And like kind of like the line they keep saying, like we have to maintain order for all time, always. We have to maintain order. That is a very like Ultron phrase. Like yeah, there must be order.
It's also a Hydra concept too. So there's but here's the other interesting thing to kind of piggyback off that thought is, was it yesterday they just released the What If trailer for the next Disney Plus series that's coming out? What If is a new series for Marvel, and it is, I think it's like an anthology series of it's animated, but it's all about what if Black Panther was picked up by, who is the blue character from Guardians of the Galaxy?
Oh, what's his name?
His dad, his papa.
Yeah.
Captain,
so what if
Captain speaking?
What if he picked up T'Challa instead of picking up Peter Quill?
Interesting.
Right? What if Agent Carter took the serum instead of Steve Rogers? What if Tony Stark was never saved by Warmonger instead of captured by the Ten Rings? And it explores these different what if scenarios that you got Agent Carter. She's Captain Carter, and she has like the shield, and she has the Britain flag on her chest and stuff like that. And you know, you got you got T'Challa in Peter Quill's attire and he's the Guardian of the Galaxy, right? And it's all these different concepts of like, what if it went a different way, which is what creates variance
Yeah. It
in
leaves us a
the
lot of room for all the multiverse stuff they're coming at. So if one of those hits and is really popular, could easily make a live action movie, like
Mhm.
expand that MCU into the multiverse even deeper. That's
But
exciting. That's super cool. I haven't watched the trailer yet.
I always wonder, like, why did they release that trailer now? Why right now? They haven't released the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer yet.
Mm-hmm.
Black Widow just came out today. Why would you release the What If trailer yesterday, this morning?
Yeah. Yeah.
MCU, what are you doing?
It was Yondu. What's his name?
Yondu.
John
Thank you.
I
Do.
knew if I thought about it for a minute, I'd remember.
Captain's teaching. That's what I always think about that scene because it's so funny to me when he's like, "I'm gonna eat you, boy," and then like it's James Gunn's brother. It's like
Yeah.
Captain's teaching. Captain's got to teach stuff.
Yes, yes, that's good. So, I read about a theory that the Spider-Men that are rumored to be in No Way Home are actually variants that by the end of Loki, he will have restored to their timelines. And that's that.
That is a wild theory right there.
Oh
That's a
my
wild
God.
one.
I know, right? I just want
That-
them to I want them to combine all three movies' musics together for No Way Home. Like I want it so bad. It hurts.
A super theme.
Dude.
We've said it from the very beginning of the show. Loki is going to have a great impact on the MCU to come. It was established in the first episode. These timekeepers, combined all the multiverses together into a perfect timeline. That's going to get unraveled. We all kind of feel it coming, right? Whoever's in charge is going to get confronted. Mobius is going back to the TVA, and I think things are going to unwind. And that's a really interesting thought. Maybe Boner from WandaVision actually is Quicksilver, and he gets plopped back into his place or something like that.
Well, I think that's what it's showing you. That's what Loki is showing you, is that, like, because for a long time, like, I thought of the multiverse as like the same the same character or the same actor would have to play the same character in multiple timelines, but they're just the different choices allow for different variants. But what Loki is showing us is that the variants differ in every way, shape, and form. And so I do think that Ralph Boner is Quicksilver from Fox's X-Men universe. And he either didn't know that he either didn't remember that he's Quicksilver, or because he was in Wanda's, Dome of Sadness, that he just didn't have his, because he still had his powers, but he just, what I love is one thing that Marvel has done really well in every one of their shows is they have harkened back to the classic costume at one time or another.
Yes.
With every single character, the classic comic book costume, and and maybe not so much in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but that was also, they're not really as much of costume driven. But I don't know about Falcon. I mean, he could have been a harken back to his classic outfit. I don't know. I didn't really follow Falcon that closely.
It wasn't. Falcon's his outfit in the comics was terrible. It was so 70s.
It was like red and white.
So 70s. The white was a nice addition, but
the old man Loki was comic book Loki. And so I love that. And man, I do think, I mean, if you go back to the first episode and you listen to Miss Minutes presentation, she talks about how the multiverse was just in chaos. It was madness. And that's when the timekeepers came in. And so if you listen to that dialogue that she had, giving Loki kind of the overview, and then all of a sudden Doctor Strange's title is Multiverse of Madness. So I think that Miss Minutes presentation in episode 1 was spoiling, quote unquote, the end of what's going to happen at the end of Loki. There's something is going to happen, and the multiverse is going to unravel, and it's just going to be a mass web. And No Way Home, I think, is the first movie that's going to address the madness that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm on that train. I think that the multiverse will unravel. I don't know if it's for the better or for the worse. We'll see. But I'm excited for the rumors. Hopefully they're true, and I'm excited for Multiverse of Madness to see how that's fixed. If it's going to get fixed, or if it's going to just be released into the world that it is, the multiverse exists, and we have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, Grayson, when you were talking at the very beginning of the episode about Eliath being the cloud and thinking that it's Galactus, when you said that, I was like, I swear to God, if they had brought Galactus as a cloud, like that horrible Fantastic Four movie, I was gonna have to stop watching. Like, nope, I'm done.
I think they know better than that. Like, I hope. I mean,
well,
they've done better than that on everything else. So
it was only the second worst Fantastic Four movie. I mean, the first one was Fanforstic, and that one was a close second. And then the original wasn't bad; it was campy, but whatever.
Yeah, it's got Chris Evans.
Grayson, didn't I see the Rise of Silver Surfer with you? That's
yes.
right. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I remember going to the theaters with you. We watched that.
Yeah.
And Lawrence Fishburne is voicing that Silver Surfer, and you know that's the other thing. I almost threw this out earlier when we were talking about Ultron, but I was like, man, it's be a really fun time for Doctor Doom to show up. You know what I mean? I mean, he doesn't line up with any of the story plots yet, but they did show like a castle when you can kind of see through that thing, and I was like, who's got a real bad castle? Dr. Doom.
So let's talk about that very, very last scene. Last scene of the episode leads us into the finale. They've enchanted Goliath, and they can see. I can't tell if they can see into his mind or if they're actually able to pass through. I can't really tell what's happening, but they're able to see where this person is. And two thoughts hit. First and foremost, whatever's behind the fortress looks an awful lot like the quantum realm. That's thought number one. Thought number two, there's three thoughts. Middle thought is, if it is the quantum realm, and there's everybody knows there's been like a little Easter egg in Ant-Man. It's either Ant-Man or Ant-Man the Wasp, where you see a little city in a dome, and that's supposedly where Kang lives. If it is, that looks a lot different than the fortress that we got in this episode. So if it's Kang's place, it looks different than what I imagined it would. Third thought is, it looked a lot like maybe a Doctor Doom fortress, and I was like, is this how they're going to introduce Doctor Doom into all this? And he was going to be the one. He rebuilt Sokovia into something else, and that's what it looks like now.
There would be a lot of explaining to do to make that work, but I'm here for it because I think Dr. Doom is one of the nastiest, like sickest looking villains. That just the metal face mask is like all you need. I'm like, oh, this dude's bad, bad to the bone.
I think if we were closer to getting a Fantastic Four movie, then yes. But knowing that it's probably 3 years out, I don't know. Dr. Doom would be awesome.
Would be awesome.
I'd be here for it. To your point, Thanos was teased really early on, and before we even ever got true dialogue from him.
He was teased in the Avengers film who he was the villain of, but they've never teased a villain before they've shown the team that's going to defeat the villain. If they did that, now Kang getting introduced, and that's why I when you're talking about Loki, I actually think Loki and Sylvie are going to end up on the side of good when it's all said and done.
I think so too.
And more of a, I'm trying to think of one of the heroes of the Avengers. I guess the closest would be, I don't know, probably Winter Soldier, is that good and bad at the same time, where, he's a good guy. He wants to be a good guy, but there's just something in him that just kept him, from fully embracing it. And now he's fully embraced it. And he's, one of the most underrated MCU heroes on the docket. And, dude, I love Sebastian Stan as Winter Soldier. I love it.
I hope they change the next title to Captain America and the White Wolf. That would be awesome.
Absolutely. So yeah, this episode I think just sets up such a. I want it. I want the next. I was ready to watch the next one. That's why. I wish that Disney would release series like Netflix does sometimes,
Yeah.
just so that I could binge it all at the same time.
Yes. Definitely making me be patient for sure.
Well,
At least it's
next
only
week,
6 episodes. It's not like WandaVision. It was like 10.
True.
right. Well, let's. We want to hear your comments and theories. So, what do you think is going to happen in the season finale of Loki next week? Send them our way. We'd love to hear them. We want to hear what you think is going to happen in the MCU as a whole. What's happening elsewhere? What else is going on in the world of the Nerdvana, the Nerdverse? What's going on? I have a couple. One thing that I wanted to share. So recently, and I don't remember exactly when, but Hugh Jackman posted on his Instagram on one of his stories a fan art of the Claws. Right, nothing too crazy about that. He played that character for 16 plus years, give or take, and cool. That's just like a little tribute. He liked it. It was cool. The next post, the next story right after that, he posts is a picture of him and Kevin Feige. Now, that picture is on the web. It can be Googled. You can find it. Some people are saying it's because one of the directors has passed away, and one of the Marvel directors has passed away, and it was a tribute to him and stuff like that. But let's be honest, Hugh Jackman doesn't run his Instagram account. We all know that. Why would they put a Wolverine fan art pick and a Kevin Feige Hugh Jackman pick back to back and not want to raise some type of suspicion around?
Yeah.
Is Jackman coming back as Wolverine in the MCU?
Yeah, I'd lose my mind. I mean, he outside of Patrick Stewart being cast as Professor X, he was the perfectly cast Wolverine, and just embraced the role and ran with it. And now it's to the point where like it's like if somebody tried to be Tony Stark at this point. It's just like no, it just wouldn't work. Like Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark. Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. He needs the multiverse proves that they can bring Fox characters over. So bring the one Fox character that everybody wants over and let Hugh be Wolverine in the MCU. Let him battle Hulk in a movie.
Be so good. It would be so good.
So even if it's just a cameo in the multiverse of madness, that's all I care about. Just bring him into the fold. Oh, let it happen, please.
I think it'd be great.
The only like nerd stuff that I've heard about recently is that Ghostbusters has been given an official release date of later this year. Ghostbusters Afterlife. Very excited for that film. And we've been waiting for a proper Ghostbusters film for quite some time. And this is going to feature, I think, the entire living original cast in some role or another, including Bill Murray. So
wow. I didn't
very
hear that.
excited.
That's cool.
Dude, yeah, the teases and stuff that are out for it. Paul Rudd looks amazing in it. It's
I love Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd is a winner, man.
He's one of my favorite underrated actors. People don't use him.
He's absolutely underrated. You're right, and I think he's going to bring a lot to Ghostbusters. I'm very excited to see what they do. We'll have to wait and see. But I saw that finally did get a release date because they've been holding it since the pandemic. So definitely want to see that. I'm definitely dying to see Black Widow this weekend. I know as you guys are as well. Let's talk about that. Get together. I don't know when that can happen, but we should talk about that.
It came out today, and I haven't seen it yet, and I'm eager because it's coming at a time where we all know it was supposed to come out last year, well, whatever. It's coming out in a time now, right before the end of Loki, and right before kind of the unfolding of the rest of what's going to take place for phase 4 of MCU is going to happen. Like I heard a rumor that the trailer, the first teaser for Spider-Man No Way Home is ready, but they haven't released it yet.
I saw a leak. Somebody had recorded something. I'm not going to describe it or anything like that, but it was on TikTok and somebody had recorded the leaked trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home. And it was the very last like 10 seconds. No, it looked legit. And of course, so, you don't notice until you swipe it and you're like, No Way Home. And dude, so Black Widow was supposed to start phase 4. And now it's coming at a time when we're already 3 series into phase 4 and Eternals is coming out later this year. And so as a prequel film, I'm not sure how it's going to tie into like the rest of the MCU unless it sets up mutants. That's the only way that I think it can become relevant, because in the movie and the timeline is back after Age of Ultron. So we know what happens to Black Widow after that. Huh?
It's not like they reshot anything.
No, but I'm saying like it would have made sense to come right after Black Widow had died in Endgame, to be the first movie after, Far From Home, for that to be the first thing. But now it's coming and we're just ramping up into this multiverse of beauty. And then all of a sudden we just get tethered back to reality with this film that really happened, 15 years prior in the timeline. Right. So I think it's going to be really good. Don't get me wrong. I'm excited about the cast. I love the story. I'm psyched for it. It's going to be awesome. And Marvel doesn't make a crap movie, or at least they haven't since Thor 2. Or maybe Iron Man 3.
I don't think it's going to be too weird to be back to reality, because we've talked about this before. Like there's two kind of directions that Marvel takes: a very grounded approach and a very cosmic approach, a very magic approach, if you will. Your Captain Americas and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Winter Soldier, Falcon Winter Soldier, Black Widow, all that kind of takes place in this more grounded.
Even most of Iron Man takes place in that too.
A lot of Iron Man. And you have the more cosmic side of things, WandaVision, Loki, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy. They all kind of culminated in Infinity War and Endgame, which I think is making it really hard to delineate between those two worlds. But the thing that we have to remember is that, and I don't think mutants is what's going to be set up, because what they started establishing at the end of Endgame was Secret Invasion. So I think what Black Widow will start setting up is Secret Invasion. That I think the grounded universe, the grounded world of the MCU will really, because what was part of that was S.H.I.E.L.D. and Samuel L. Jackson's character, Nick Fury, he's with the Skrulls, right?
Yeah, so, on the sword base.
So now we have a trajectory. Secret Invasion is that trajectory. So how are we going to get there? It's not going to be through Loki. That's not going to make sense. We got Skrulls at the end of WandaVision. We have theories that Emily Van Camp's Agent 13, Agent Carter is a Skrull possibly, or that she's talking to the Skrull leader on Earth, or who is who's really going, what's happening back there. We had a Skrull in Loki, so we do have that connection there. I think that Black Widow, if anything, will have an end credit scene that teases a Secret Invasion, especially with Far From Home showing that Nick Fury was a Skrull that whole time. So
I'm excited to see what happens.
It's going to be good.
We'll see.
It's going to be good. Well, yeah.
In fact, here's the other thing that I'd throw your way. My theory for Black Widow is that the Black Widow that we see in this movie is going to end up being a Skrull, and that's how she's brought back to the MCU even after her death in Endgame.
Okay. All right.
I'd have to see how that one plays out.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, I'd love to see more ScarJo. She's awesome.
That's right.
Oh, definitely.
One day we'll have to, maybe after Loki, when we try to figure out what's next for our show, maybe we'll have this discussion of like, how did Captain America resetting the stones actually work? And
let me tell you the movie I'd like to see.
Where's ScarJo?
Well, I want to see Cap go meet Red Skull and return that stone. The man he basically sent back into space, like in Captain America. That would have been. I was dying for that when I was Infinity War happening. He's taking the stones back. I'm like, oh, we're about to see Red Skull and Cap like you have it out in some way. How do you even return that stone?
I need to know, like, when you return the Soul Stone, like they returned it to the time when Black Widow was murdered or killed. So like, does she come back?
That's what I'm saying. How do you even return that stone? And then obviously as he shows up, it'd be like, Steve Rogers, you are here, son and mother. Like he knows your whole lineage, but like, is he gonna also tell you, oh, you put the stone there, it's returned? Like, I don't
Sent
understand.
me to this place.
I can guide others to it, but you can return it at the front gate. Like, I don't understand. I'm confused, but I want to see it. I definitely want to see them meet up.
I mean, how do they return the reality stone? They shove a needle back in Jane and shove it back inside her. I mean,
sorry, Jane, take one for the team.
So there's a whole. I wish that they had spent 15 minutes. That's all it would have taken. Just give me a montage of Cat putting the stones back at the end.
To a funny song, even.
Cap shows up and he's like, Jane, it's going to get awkward.
I mean, the easiest one to put back would have been the time stone.
I believe that probably, I like to believe that Thor's mom probably helped out somehow.
Sure. I like that.
Yeah.
Again, a movie I'd like to see,
Yeah. I'm gonna end this thought with a Black Widow theory to continue. Is I believe she did come back, and I Jeremy, you brought it up in the last episode, but the Hulk says, I've been looking for her, right? Can't find her. We assume that he's talking about her, but I think that Nick Fury has her up in his scroll ship, and she's with him now. Yeah, I think.
Well, at this point, you could just get a ScarJo variant,
right?
I mean,
oh God, are they scrolls? Are they variants? What's going to happen? Fix us, Doctor Strange. Fix us.
Yeah, and that brings up a good question. Is I'd love to know how much the Ancient One knew about the TVA.
Yeah,
and if she did know anything, it's interesting. So, well, that was episode 5 and a whole lot of other stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, tickle the bell, so you can be notified when we have new content on the channel. We'll be back next week with episode 6 as well. And we're also going to be dropping some content about Black Widow when we gather again. So until next time, this has been the Nerdy South, and we've had a great time.
Bye, y'all.